Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Friday Reads video for October 11th, 2019. I have a lot of books to talk about, but I really want to keep this short. It's been a really long week. I had Yom Kippur in the middle of it. I took the day off work, of course, but I've been trying to save up my PTO ostensibly for an Israel trip I'm hoping to take in the summer, although I also have days where I'll be forced to take off later. So anyway, I'm trying to keep my hours up, which means I've been working overtime the other 4 days, and I'm filming this early to get it up on Friday anyway. Now I'm wasting time. So, books I finished this week. This memoir, A Land Twice Promised, An Israeli Woman's Quest for Peace by Noah Baum. I don't know why I thought, I guess in the beginning, that it might be a little more equal between her perspective of her story and her Palestinian friend's perspective of her story, but it isn't. It's really much more about Baum. Not to say that that necessarily detracts from the book, because these are the parameters. Baum goes through her life, starting from how she saw the world as a young girl, and then, which was sort of the most fiercely Israeli nationalist, especially when she was going through some of the wars, like the 1967 and Yom Kippur Wars. And then when she was in her army service, how she started to questioning the narrative of the government and the army being, totally unquestionably good. And then it continues through her college years, and from there she gets a husband and moves to the U.S. and befriends a Palestinian American woman who is from her neighborhood, and they have kids the same age, and they actually grow a relationship that tries to keep politics at bay as much as they can, despite the fact that, they both grew up around the same time in Jerusalem. And finally, Baum, who is growing into a career as a storyteller, decides she might want to broach this issue of complementary stories. And that gets her into finding out about her friend Joama's story and comparing it with her own, and then comparing their mother's stories. And mostly it's about finding the common empathy and threads between them. There's a lot of stories out there about people from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict trying to come together and find a way toward peace and peacemaking, and Baum was already a figure on the left who was, pro-peace, anti-occupation, all of that. But I think that this particular memoir does a good job at highlighting the power of storytelling as a way for empathy, to truly listen and to inhabit as much as you can someone else's experiences. A lot of this is also about her creating a one-woman show about her and Joama's and their mother's experiences. So yeah, I thought it was particularly powerful in the way that it explored empathy through storytelling. The second book I finished listening to on audio was TIDELANDS by Philippa Gregory. I think, like a lot of people, thought the ending felt a little bit abrupt, although to an extent I understood why it was so fast-moving. To quickly synopsize the plot, it takes place in 17th century England around the time of the Civil War, the very end of it when the king is executed. Spoiler alerts. We're following Eleanor, who is a medical woman, a midwife. She and her family have proclivities for herbs. She's also a little bit of an outsider because her husband abandoned her, and she's sort of on the cusp of poverty. So these things sort of make her a little bit of an outcast in the community. She lives in the Tidelands of England, which Gregory basically writes as a character in and of itself. She meets a man who's a secret papist, and she protects him, and they actually start to fall for each other. I wouldn't say it's all swoony romance without any other substance to their relationship. In fact, Gregory has a whole host of subplots to complement this love story about Eleanor's children and her brother, and about her lover himself and his involvement in the papist plot to save the king. Gregory probes a lot about what life would be like, especially for poorer people during this tumultuous time when the king is being replaced by a parliament and religion is changing. But I think the overarching theme, which you really can't get away from, I don't know if I would say Gregory overstates it, but it just seems to be a fact, is that women are always at the bottom of the totem pole, and it was a time of extreme superstition, and when you're different, and particularly when you're a woman, that's not so great for you. I think most of the main characters were incredibly well drawn, and I'd recommend it. It's the first in a series. I think she's going to go in subsequent books and follow this family throughout the generations. So maybe it'll be more like a more prolonged and English version of Ya Jesse's Homegoing. Still have to read that one too. This next book I just finished, I read during Yom Kippur, is Dear Zealots by Amos Oz. This is Oz's final book that he wrote before his passing. It's really a collection of 3 essays about fanaticism, particularly the first 2. The first one looks a lot at Islamic fanaticism, although, you know, it has some more universal themes as well. And then the second one looks at Jewish-Israeli fanaticisms. The third is called Dreams Israel Should Let Go of Soon, and I feel like this one was the most direct, and I could feel like he was booming this out in my head while he's laying down hard truths about what Israel might be facing if it doesn't soon accept the 2-state solution. I know I'm coming from a little place of bias because, you know, I agree with him politically about the 2-state solution. Oz speaks a lot, very lovingly a lot even, about the state of prophets in Israel. This is in fact his last paragraph of the final essay. And to me this very much reads like a biblical prophet you know, yelling pessimistically about the future, and I guess I feel like I should not like it, but I'm a cynic, and I believe it, so anyway. I'm extremely fearful for the future. I fear the government's policies, and I am ashamed of them. I am afraid of the fanaticism and the violence which are becoming increasingly prevalent in Israel, and I am also ashamed of them. But I like being Israeli. I like being a citizen of a country where there are 8.5 million prime ministers, 8.5 million prophets, 8.5 million messiahs. Each of us has our own personal formula for redemption, or at least for a solution. Everyone shouts and few listen. It is never boring here. It is vexing, galling, disappointing, sometimes frustrating and infuriating, but almost always fascinating and exciting. What I have seen here in my lifetime is far less, yet also far more than what my parents and their parents ever dreamed of. So, I mean, in these essays, the major thing that Oz is embracing is the uncertainty of the world. What is it that Publishers Weekly says here? It says, a good introduction to Oz's nuanced perspective, Dear Zealots leaves readers with a strong message about the need for a greater society-wide openness to doubt and ambiguity. I just am falling more and more for Amos Oz. You know, out of these 8.5 million prophets, I think when it comes to Israel, I think I follow him the most. Maybe it's even gotten more crazy in my head since his passing. And it seems like, you know, your people's words become more immemorial when they are gone. I should remember there continues to be an Israeli left. There continues to be the 2-state solution advocates. I feel like I can read this book and be a drop in the water of Jewish community and peoplehood. I feel like one of many as we confront these issues that are paramount to our future, to the future of the world's Jewish state, where almost half of the world's Jewish population lives. Other people have mixed feelings, and maybe bias moves me some, but this spoke to me. Really liked it. The audiobook I'm in the middle, well, that's generous, of reading now, is Inheritance by Dani Shapiro. And I'm almost having an opposite Jewish reaction to this one because I'm making it extremely personal, even though I guess you can't really say that about someone else's memoirs. And if I were to obtain an Ancestry.com DNA test, I would be incredibly shocked if my own paternity was questioned, though to be fair, so was she. Although apparently more shocked than she should have been, at least that's what she seems to be delving through in her memoir about incidents in her past that may have pointed to this huge secret that her parents kept from her, that her father isn't her biological father, which starts a huge, identity crisis for her, and a lot of that has to do with the idea of her Jewishness, because her father was part of a huge empire, isn't really the right word, but there are a lot of prominent Jewish thinkers and leaders within her father's family that she felt very connected to, and now she's not biologically related to. According to Jewish law, anyone with a Jewish mother is halakhically Jewish, but because Shapiro looks so much like her biological father, she's always gotten a lot of flack about her Judaism, and I think because she identified so much with her real father, and who was the more prevalently Jewish of her two parents, like he had the bigger history behind him, the fact that she lost it made her start questioning her own Judaism. But, for me, this sends up a lot of flares, because I grew up questioning my own Judaism in that way, because I'm halakhically Jewish through my mother, but my father isn't Jewish. And basically, I guess anything can set off imposter syndrome. Shapiro grew up in an incredibly Jewish household. She had a lot more Jewish education than I did, whereas I'm flailing in my own adulthood, trying to learn and keep up, and I always feel like I'm trying to prove myself. Maybe that's why I talk about Judaism ad nauseum on this channel. And I've also wanted to do a DNA test. For me, my father's family is also more identified than my mother's. I mean, they weren't, prominent historical people. They were just regular folks. They are regular folks, but my father has a lot more information about my grandparents who were immigrants to the U.S. and about their families, a lot of which are still in Italy. And I have next to nothing about my mother's family. I think at the end of this I might be ordering my own Ancestry.com DNA kit. It's been something I've been grappling with for a while. I think, unlike Shapiro, who wasn't expecting to find any surprises within her DNA kit, I'm worried about what I might find, because there is, so much ambiguity in my past. So it's strange to identify so much with Shapiro. I guess in a way, we started from extremes of Jewish identity, and ultimately what her DNA test proved is that she and I are more similar because we are the half-Jews, as it were. I hate that term. But the major thing I should be doing is getting over my own issues and, dealing with what she's saying and how this is affecting her directly. And luckily I'm reading this for book club, so hopefully everyone else who isn't stuck in my own personal existential crisis will maybe remind me of what this book is actually about. We'll see how I do. The next book I'm saying I'm in the middle of, but really I'm much closer to the beginning, is this one. This is Searching for Sylvie Lee by Jean Kwok. It's an ARC of a novel that came out in June that I have, and I'd like to finish. It's the story of a Chinese-American family with secrets, so ding, 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 ding. I love it. And the plot is moving rather fast right now, which I guess isn't surprising, because what I heard about this novel is that it's literary fiction, but it has a little more of that genre bent about mystery and intrigue in it. It's about the disappearance of the main character, Amy's older sister, Sylvie. She went to the Netherlands to visit some family there who she actually grew up with for a time, and then she sort of went off the map. And I'm only a few chapters in, or a handful of chapters in, and so much is, kind of happening. Like, her marriage was more on the rocks than anyone knew, and there seems to be a lot of strain with especially one relative. And I'm liking it. On some levels, it's reminding me of Shelter by Jun Young, which was one of my favorite books last year, about a Korean-American family that had a lot of mystery that kind of came at you almost immediately. Although I am hoping it slows down a little bit soon. Some of the complementary chapters that narrate Sylvie's perspective from a month prior. Kind of gives a little more background and emotional weight to everything going on, so it's not just all bewilderment. But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping this is less of a whodunit and more of a how does this affect everybody, but I have high hopes right now. And finally, just because I feel like I should say I have this in my possession now, it's my library's copy of the Testaments by Margaret Atwood, which has come to me at long last. It really hasn't been that long at all. I guess they ordered a lot of copies. But it's my reminder that I have it and I can soon participate in the broader conversation on BookTube and in the larger bookish world once I read it. I also should read it quickly, and so I should finish up those other books soon, because of course there's a long holds list behind me, so I'll have to return it pretty soon to the library as it is. This is kind of hefty. In all honesty, I guess I'm not expecting the best things. I think it's a little closer to the show than I might like, which is weird to complain about because I still like aspects of the show too, but I think that's starting to go off the rails, and I was kind of hoping Atwood would move away from the characters in the show. But anyway, I still like a lot of the themes that are in The Handmaid's Tale, the show, and especially the book. So I'm assuming that there will still be themes like that in here, or maybe there'll be an interesting commentary on more contemporary America and life and totalitarianisms of, you know, the 21st century rather than the late 20th century when she wrote The Handmaid's Tale. I'm still expecting there'll be things I like in this or will make me think, so I'll be looking forward to it. So that about covers it for me now. I have an exciting weekend coming up, at least on Saturday. I'm attending an all-day workshop with the Maryland Writers Association with a literary agent and writer. He's talking about the emotional craft of fiction, especially with writing characters. Really excited and hopeful. You know, it's a great time too because it's Preptober, and I'm hoping to be crafting great characters for my fantasy project. It's also a holiday weekend here in the US, so I won't have to go to work on Mondays, so that's great too, especially after this long week. I might go ahead and take the extra time to put up my AuthorTube video for the month. Hopefully I'll be in the zone. I also have to do some prepping stuff for my Nano and announcing my Nano, and Nano refers to NaNoWriMo, which is called National Novel Writing Month. It's hugely popular in writing circles about writing 50,000 words of a project in November. And next month I will be doing weekly vlogs on my progress. Anyway, I'll leave all of that for then and sign off now. Hope you all have great weekends coming up as well. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.